Welcome back to another glorious, wonderful episode of the Final Word Podcast. As always, I'm Steve Beach.
And I'm Brian Mayer. Hello.
I want to say that we now have an official public Facebook page, Brian. We have arrived, finally.
Is the bar is set that low now?
I guess so, yes.
Oh, okay, well.
It is. So,
yay.
So that's what I worked on this past weekend.
Okay.
So we now have an official public page, the Final Word Podcast.
Cool.
On Facebook. Speaking of Facebook, I've been seeing a lot of news stories and things on there recently about going to Mars. And so, what better time to do the record that we chose?
Absolutely. We are doing the Planetarium Lecture Series number 4, Mysteries of Mars, by Hubert J. Bernhard, who was a lecturer at the Morrison Planetarium.
I've been there before, I think.
Have you really?
No.
Okay. You got me. The Planetarium Lecture Series, according to the back of the record, is an attempt to bring the thrill and intellectual stimulation of planetarium lectures into the home and classroom through dramatic recording adaptations of the kind of programs currently offered in planetariums everywhere.
I feel sorry for the kids who had to listen to this in their classroom.
Yeah.
In the 70s.
Yeah. This guy he's not dynamic. He's not interesting. But they do at least spice it up. There's some music that's happening in the background.
Yes.
There's some oboe. There's some theremin. And honestly, every now and then, I get a little glimpse of Star Wars.
I would agree.
It makes me feel like I'm on Tatooine. This is a record. I want to say that it's rife with science, but it's more rampant with speculation.
Yes, it is. I would definitely agree.
This is a guy who wants to make a barren, rocky planet exciting, so he keeps offering tantalizing hints of what could be life.
Right. Yep.
But it's not.
All right, well, let's get into it.
Yep, let's do it. Tonight on Mysteries of Mars, will Jack finally be able to express his love for Tanya? And will Tanya survive her trial by fire? Literal fire?
There are dark areas that may be vast regions of primitive
Is it like the
vegetation.
alleys of Chicago in the 70s?
There are polar
Maybe.
caps that may be frozen water.
Polar caps, are those
And
the
there are
candy
even
Steve?
larger sections
I think they're
that
called snow
almost
caps,
certainly
what you're thinking
are
of.
desert
Ugh.
wastelands.
Fine.
These facts and inferences, even without
Steve,
the epical flight
desert
of the
wastelands
space
on a
probe
barren,
Mariner
rocky
4,
planet.
the long-standing
Mysterious.
history of the so-called canals, and the strange story of its 2 satellites are enough to make the planet Mars one of the most fascinating objects in the sky.
Other fascinating sky
There
objects,
is,
Steve.
to be sure,
Halley's Comet,
great controversy
the Helix
over
Nebula,
the nature of
and
the
why
polar
Tom
caps
Cruise
of
is
Mars
allowed to fly
and of the
real
dark
jets
areas,
for fake
and over the
movies.
possibility of life. But that is to be expected. Mars is a small world and far
The Gary
away,
Coleman of
and
planets.
the difficulties in studying it
I think
are
it'd be
many.
better to say the Kevin Hart.
It's
of
not to be
planets.
wondered that
What you talking about,
astronomers differ
Steve?
over their conclusions, but rather that they are able to arrive at any conclusions at all.
Morons.
Mars is only 4,200 miles in diameter. Under the best of conditions,
You
it
can
comes
still
no
never
closer
get
to the
there.
Earth
It's just
than
a little
34.5 million miles. At that
Ooh,
size and distance,
34.5 million miles.
it appears
That's
no larger than a 6-inch saucer at a distance of 1 mile,
football fields.
and it is far more difficult
That's how
than the
Americans
saucer
measure distance,
to
Steve.
observe.
Yes, we do.
One would assume, for instance, that the saucer was stationary.
This guy's
Mars
really
is not.
assuming.
It speeds around the
He
sun
insults
at
Uma Thurman a lot.
15 miles per second, and it spins on its axis once in 24 hours and 37 minutes, so that its day is only 41.5 minutes longer than that of the Earth.
Woohoo! I would get an extra
One
41
would
and a half
assume
minutes
that
of
the
sleep a
telescope
day.
trained on the saucer was
Doesn't sound
firmly
too bad.
anchored.
Rock on.
Those focused on Mars are not. They are mounted on the spinning Earth,
Steve, why
which
do I
itself
want to
swings around
instinctively
the
and
sun at
immediately
18
take this
miles
guy's
per
lunch
second.
money?
One would assume that the saucer could at
his
least
voice
be
just
seen
oozes
occasionally
passion.
on
Yes.
a clear day. Mars cannot be. It must
Poor
be studied
guy.
always through the obscuring atmosphere
Sad
of the Earth
Mars.
and that of Mars itself. In addition, the most effective telescopic magnification that can be used on Mars or indeed on any of the planets,
I bet 5.
is about 900 diameters.
Just a little
That
off.
is not as productive for Mars
Hey,
as
Steve, did you also know
12-power
that Hubert
binoculars
J. Bernard was
applied
voted
to
the
the
world's
surface of the
sexiest
moon.
Mars expert for 11 years
Obviously,
in a row?
I
the
did not know
limits
that.
of scientific
It was a pretty narrow
ingenuity
field,
are
but
taxed
he still
in the
felt
effort
proud.
to obtain any clear and unequivocal information about the red planet. And much of what is obtained is subject to varying interpretations, in spite of more than 3
just can't
centuries
Nonsense
of observation.
like his.
Yeah, they just can't agree on anything.
Telescopic discovery about me in the 17th century.
Little
He
Skippy.
found that
Yeah.
the planet goes through certain limited phases, similar to those of the nearly full moon.
With the Martian phases.
They result from
Hey,
the
Steve,
fact that,
I saw them play
except
back
when
in
Mars
05
is
at a concert.
directly opposite the sun from
don't say
us,
it.
But
we
the
do not
concert
see
was
all
out
of
of
the
this
lighted
world.
half.
I hate
The
you.
Martian phases, however, are not extreme. We always see at least 6/7 of the lighted portion, and the planet
Well,
never
that's
looks less
85%
round
if you want to be
than the moon
complicated
within
about
about 4 days of full. Galileo's discovery of phases was
Galileo,
a minor
Galileo,
compared with what was to
Figaro.
come. The disclosure that the planet has white caps at the poles and some permanent surface features.
Ooh, like a tattoo.
Right.
It was in 1659 that the astronomer Huygens
1659, dudes!
these markings, the dark wedge-shaped area known today as Syrtis Major.
Better
Far
than
from being
Syrtis
a mere
Minor.
I
curiosity,
guess.
Huygens' carefully dated drawing
Huygens, didn't he invent a
helps
beer?
to fix the
That's
rotation
Heineken.
period of Mars
Oh.
to an accuracy
Still an
of better
important
than
discovery.
1/50th
Yes.
of a second. For the most part,
1/50th of a
unfortunately,
second, Steve.
that kind of
Color
accuracy
B
is limited to the
impressed.
simple physical statistics concerning the planet. Mars,
Simple
we know,
physical statistics
is a small
versus
world.
what, Steve? Mars's
Its surface
personality?
gravity is only about 1/3 that of the Earth, so that a man who weighs 180 pounds here would find that he tipped the scales on Mars at only 60,
Hey, Brian, I'm
and
going to start a
that
new
he
diet
could lift
program.
correspondingly
gonna be?
heavier weights.
Martian Weight Watchers. You lose a third of your
Mars
weight on the
goes
first
around
day.
the sun once in 687 days,
So mad
so
at
that
you.
its year is almost twice as long as ours. Its mean distance from the sun is 141 million miles. As we
It's a
shall
mathematical
discover,
term.
Oh,
this results
That's
in a
okay.
world where temperatures are much lower than on Earth, but not so low as to rule out the fascinating possibility that life
frost.
can and does flourish there.
Ooh. Life on a
The
planet
distance
devoid
of
of
Mars
atmosphere?
from the Sun at any given time varies considerably. Mars is sometimes within 128 million miles of the Sun, and sometimes as distant as 155 million miles.
It's the same
Coupled
emotional
with the
distance
Earth's
between
more
him and his
nearly
wife.
circular path, this fact makes the distance of Mars from the Earth vary greatly even when they pass closest to one another. The Earth, on an inside track and moving faster, swings past
an inside
Mars
track and moving
every
faster,
2
just like his
years
handsome
and
younger
50
brother.
days. It is then, when the planets are in opposition, as astronomers say,
every 2 years, Earth versus
they are
Mars.
nearest.
An all-out
but this
brawl.
close
Ooh, I
approach
like it.
may
To the
be
death.
as great as 63
I'll
million
kick your
miles,
astral plane!
or as little as 34.5 million, depending upon where the planets are in their orbits at the time of passage. It is only every
love that orbit
15
gum.
or
It tastes really
17
good.
years that optimum conditions prevail, and the planets pass within 35 million miles
Did
or
you
so.
think that astronomers leap?
This always occurs in
I think so.
August or September.
They don't. Shuffle
Because the
awkwardly?
Earth passes the
yes.
point at which the orbit of
Leap?
Mars is closest
No.
to the
I
Sun
call
on
shenanigans on
August
that one.
28th. The last such favorable opportunity for observations of Mars occurred in 1956. The next
Oh, we missed it.
will be in 1971.
Oh, we missed
Darn
that
it,
one.
missed it again. I was born in
Astronomers
72.
leap at such
Steve,
opportunities,
you're so close, buddy.
and a worldwide network of observers is organized for the occasion. It is largely at such times,
Like Bonnaroo.
and now, when there is a successful launching of a space probe, that major advances in our knowledge of Mars are made. It has long been known, for instance, that Mars has an atmosphere. But the nature of that atmosphere
Much like
was
Applebee's.
strikingly clarified by information returned from the space
His wife
probe
says his personality
Mariner
is
4,
like Mars, his
which
atmosphere.
passed within
thin
about
and cold.
6,100 miles of the planet in July 1965.
Ooh, Steve, I got my
Previously,
first real
it had been
Mars
believed
probe.
that the Martian
Bought it at
atmosphere
the
consisted
5 and
largely of
dime.
nitrogen,
Launched
which
it off
forms
at
the bulk
Cape
of the Earth's atmosphere,
Canaveral. Was the
and
summer
a smaller,
of
but significant
65.
amount of carbon dioxide, the gas we exhale when we breathe.
Well, that's better
The
than the
Mariner
methane
probe,
gas
however,
my
gave
boys
results
express.
which indicate
Oh, yes,
there
it
is much more carbon dioxide than nitrogen. In fact, that carbon dioxide makes up most of the atmosphere. Previously, too,
That's where it goes
the
when we
Martian
breathe out.
air had been believed to be
right
thin,
from here to Mars.
but not nearly as thin as the space probe indicated.
He said probe.
Earlier estimates were that the density of the atmosphere
That
at the
shouldn't be
surface
funny,
of
but it
Mars is equal to that of the Earth at an altitude of 50 or 60,000 feet. But Mariner radio signals passing through the Martian
Mariner?
atmosphere indicated that the surface density
Is that like
is
the
equal
Mariner
to the
sauce
Earth's
used for, like,
atmosphere at
Deep fried cheese
100,000 feet.
sticks, mozzarella cheese.
This
Oh, it's marinara.
would be about
Yeah.
50 times as thin as the Earth's atmosphere at surface levels. Water and oxygen, of course, are major necessities
Of
for the support
course.
of the kind
Duh.
of life we know. There's no direct evidence of water vapor in the Martian atmosphere, which implies that
I bet
if
that
it
won't
is
stop
present,
this guy.
there's less than 5% as much as in the Earth's atmosphere. Similar failure to detect oxygen in the Martian air suggests that there must be less than 1/10% of that found on Earth.
He's very picky.
Yeah,
There's
he
little
is.
doubt about
He
the
really
carbon
is.
dioxide, however, and there's very little question that tiny crystals of this gas exist in the Martian atmosphere at great heights.
So small.
Pictures made at the edge of the planet by Mariner 4 show foggy wisps that extend to an altitude of at
Foggy
least
wisps?
60 miles.
I think that's the name
This
his wife
seems
gave him.
truly an effect produced in the atmosphere, not a photographic illusion. These carbon dioxide
So the real
crystals
photos from
may
the
account
space
for the
probe are
famous
not
violet
illusions.
haze, which
Good to
appears to
know.
encompass the planet when it is
Violet
photographed in
haze.
blue
My friend
or
James
violet
Hendricks
light.
used that to write a song.
The
Except
haze
he
is
used the word
transparent
purple
in
instead.
red or yellow, so that pictures made with such filters show surface details clearly.
Back when Jimi
Occasionally,
Hendrix was a
the
mild
haze
mannered
clears
astronomer.
so that
Right.
the surface may be seen
Who knew?
sharply,
Yeah.
even in violet light. Presumably, the clearing is caused by an increase in temperatures, which causes the crystals to evaporate.
Isn't that called
There
condensation?
are other types of clouds in the Martian
Could be.
atmosphere, too. Bluish-white, semi-transparent veils, which are probably clouds of a cirrus type, drift in the sky at altitudes between 6 and 19 miles, as
There's
measured
also
by
a green
shadows
hazy
cast
cloud
on
that
the
comes
ground.
out of my boys' room sometimes.
Yep.
They're distributed in belts which roughly
Other
parallel
clouds,
the
Steve, look
equator,
like lowercase e's.
and
There's a
sometimes they
small
extend
duck
over
wearing a
large
cowboy hat.
areas
And
and
also,
endure
there's a
for
cloud that
long
looks like a
periods.
medium-sized piano forte.
When Mars was near the Earth in 1956, one giant W-shaped cloud of this type lasted for a month,
Steve, did he just make it to Mad,
evaporating
Mad,
every
Mad,
morning
Mad
as
World
the sun
reference?
rose,
I think he did.
and
He does
reforming
not
every
get to
afternoon
do
as
that.
temperatures dropped.
It's okay, Brian. It's okay.
That makes
Still
sense.
other
It's
clouds,
just a record. It's okay.
and ones
Jonathan
which,
Winters
as we shall
deserves
see,
better.
bulk large in arguments about life on Mars, are observed at lower altitudes. Believed to be dust storms, they are yellow-brown in color and appear close
Yellow
to
brown.
the
I
surface.
think the human body has
Rarely
lots of
more
things
than
that
2
are
or 3 miles
yellow,
high.
brown.
Okay, but we're not
Seemingly,
gonna
they
talk
originate
about
in the
those right
Martian
now, but-
deserts. Often, they obscure large sections of the planet and last for several months, moving at speeds which have been estimated variously at from 3 to 30 miles an hour. The deserts from which these dust storms seem to spring cover about 60% of the surface of the planet. Their reddish color
Okay.
and the lack of
So, Steve,
atmospheric
just,
oxygen
just to help me
have
summarize
led
here, a
some
large
to believe
cloud-like
that the
shape
deserts
that is
consist
red and
mostly
appears over large
of
swaths
rust.
of desert and is only
the
a few
manner in
miles
which
off the
they
ground.
reflect sunlight
Might be a
is similar to
sandstorm?
that of a certain
like a
brownish,
sandstorm to me.
igneous rock.
Okay. I just rolled my eyes
If
so
this
hard I pulled
comparison
something.
truly
I might need a
indicates the
second.
composition of the deserts, then weathering, the process which produced sedimentary rocks on Earth, has apparently not been active on Mars.
I feel like I'm weathering this album.
Although deserts cover most of the surface, the truly fascinating features of the planet are its polar caps and the
Snow
dark
caps?
areas once called
Polar
seas,
caps.
a designation abandoned
time!
because there are no observable bodies of water on Mars.
Okay. Okay, no
The
seas
polar
on
caps
Mars.
and the
So,
dark
Steve, can I
areas
call them holes?
seem to interact with one another. A relationship
Yes.
I want to
that
look
has
at Mars's
given
holes.
impetus
Okay,
to
no.
modern speculation
no.
about
We're not
life
doing
on the
that.
planet. The interaction is linked to changes in Martian seasons, which are similar to those of the Earth, but almost twice as long. They result from the inclination of the axis of Mars, which, while it has not been measured with great precision, is known to be approximately the same as
Lazy
that of the Earth.
scientists.
In winter, the caps at the Martian poles may be as much as 2,000 miles
Martian
in diameter.
poles, isn't that where the aliens go
But
to
by the
vote
end
every
of
4
summer,
years?
the northern
Oh, I hope
cap
so.
may
I hope
shrink
they're
to as little
exercising
as
that
60
duty.
miles, and the southern cap sometimes vanishes.
Where
While
does it
this
go?
seasonal change is taking place,
Ta-da!
corresponding changes occur in the dark areas.
There is with
The
the fascination
parallel
of
with
dark
the Earth
areas
is so
again.
obvious that it leads to the suggestion that the polar caps are made of ice, and that as they release water with the coming of spring, vegetation quickens and comes to life in the dark areas. It's an
All about
inviting
those dark
picture,
areas.
but arguments as to whether it is
Ice turns
valid
into water
seem
when it
destined
melts?
to
How
continue
surprising.
for many years.
Oh,
If
if
the
only we
polar
could find a
caps
way
are
to have
indeed composed
curiosity
of
or
frozen
perseverance
water,
on Mars.
as many believe, they must be extremely thin, for they melt rapidly. They reflect sunlight in the same manner as ice and snow, and several careful studies have led to the conclusion that they are snow or hoarfrost, not more than a
Hoarfrost.
fraction of an inch
He named
thick.
that after his wife.
As reservoirs,
That was just
the
bad.
polar caps would
Oh,
hold no more
okay,
water
never
than
mind.
Lake Erie. It has always been difficult to understand how they could melt, because the average
Because I
temperature
struck
at
them
the
with my
poles is about
Illudium
100
Q36
degrees below
explosive
zero.
space modulator. That's how,
In an
Mr.
effort to
Scientist.
explain the melting, some suggest
I like that
the
one,
caps
buddy.
might be clouds of
That's
ice
a good one.
crystals.
Glad you
The
like that.
idea has never found wide acceptance. The manner in which the caps shrink, with only a narrow
Swimming
dark
pools can cause
fringe at
lots
the
of things to
edges,
shrink.
They can.
suggests that rather than melting into water, they sublimate, passing directly into water vapor, which is taken up by the atmosphere. The analogy is with the manner in which dry ice, frozen carbon dioxide, passes directly from solid into vapor form. And the analogy
my mouth
may
into the
be
air.
fact.
Your
Since
analogy
Mariner
might be
4
fact.
revealed the extreme
It
thinness
also
of
might
the
be
atmosphere,
nothing.
theorists have attempted to construct models of
Theorists,
Mars
Steve.
that
Those
would
are
account
people who
for the
make
observed
theories.
effect.
Right.
There are some other fields.
Several
There's
such projects
theorists,
have led
people who make
experimenters
beer.
to the conclusion that the
There's
polar caps are not
theorists,
frozen
people
water,
who make horror
but
movies.
frozen
Right.
carbon
then-
dioxide.
And then, oh, I had an
Whatever
uncle
the
who
nature
worked in
of
a
the
baseball
caps,
factory.
Yeah.
Their
Does that make him a
interlocking relationship
spherist?
with the dark
Yes,
areas
it
is
does.
beyond
Awesome.
question.
I'll have to let him know that.
Okay.
As the caps shrink and grow again, the changes in the dark areas include alternating tints of bluish-green in the spring
This guy's wearing
and
me out,
brown
man.
in the autumn. The effect starts
needs
near
a
the
shirt
polar
that
region
says, "I
and
love dark
gradually
areas."
extends toward the
Well,
equatorial
maybe not.
zones.
Yeah, he probably
This
wouldn't
is the
sell a lot of
opposite
those.
of the manner
Or
in
not
which
to the crowd
seasonal
he
changes
wants.
in vegetation occur on Earth. Here, the new growth rises first in the tropics and extends gradually toward the polar regions. Nevertheless, what we see on Mars could represent the seasonal awakening of plant life.
But I doubt it.
The reversal effect may be explained by supposing that if the polar caps release water, it is carried away through the atmosphere rather than on the ground.
Or maybe a bunch
The
of Mars
dark
with water
areas,
buckets.
which cover about 1/4 of the Martian surface, show some differences during successive close approaches to the Earth. Their boundaries are often modified or extended,
Yeah.
and there is clear evidence that they can
Wake
and
me
do
up
I'm struggling.
invade the desert
When
region.
this record ends.
Whatever else may be said, it's clear that change is
It's
a
clear
commonplace
that this
on
guy's
Mars.
boring.
It is not a dead, inert world.
No.
Something
But his personality
is
is.
happening
Yeah.
there.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. That cold, rocky, thin atmospheric planet, Steve.
The
It's a
greenish
hive
tint
of activity.
described by
What
some
with all those
observers
dark areas and
naturally
whatnot.
led to a
Just
search
look at all the
for signs of
Starbucks.
chlorophyll,
They're all over.
Right.
the green
Exactly.
coloring matter in earthly vegetation.
Use
No
a big
trace
giant
of
green
it has
crayon
been
to make
found.
it, make it a coloring matter.
On the other hand, it has been pointed out that some earthly mosses, algae and fungi
They're stealing
contain
our
no
bosses.
chlorophyll,
Hey, you know what, Brian?
just as
Well, buddy, I
certain
really like hanging
slug-like
out with you.
creatures
thank
that
you,
dwell
Steve.
on the
I
bottom
enjoy
of the
you
Great
too.
Lakes
Yeah, because you're a
and
fungi.
some maggots can subsist
have
on
to
a
stop.
virtually oxygen-free diet. Thus, we know nothing to oppose the idea that life, in a form relatively low on the evolutionary scale, could exist under Martian conditions. The
I
temperatures
bet
are
he heard that
discouraged,
phrase a lot when he was in grade
but they're
school.
not downright prohibitive.
Sure they
The
are.
average over the entire
Why not?
planet is about 0 on the Fahrenheit scale, as compared with 62 degrees for the Earth.
You know, Steve, in a
Nevertheless,
later interview, his wife
It
told
does
him
get
that she
comfortable
wanted
at the
him to
equator
go
of Mars.
to Mars to study
Briefly.
for life personally.
Measurements vary,
And strangely enough,
but they're in general agreement
his
that
mailman
the
asked him to
equatorial
do the
zone
same.
may enjoy a balmy 50 to 80 degrees at midday.
Ooh, balmy.
By
Sounds like the
nightfall, it
Midwest
grows
to me.
cold,
Yeah, it does.
and
No
during
wonder
the
there were
night
so
it may
many
drop as
astronauts
low
from
as
the Midwest.
100 degrees below
They're used to it.
zero.
Yeah. Negative 10?
In
A
the
week
middle
later, 100
latitudes,
degrees?
the
Sure.
daytime summer
Why not?
temperatures
Bring it
range
on.
from 30 to 70 degrees above zero, and in the winter, from 20 to
Are
60
you willing to
degrees
tolerate the
below.
cold void of space? And they were like, yes.
There are forms
I've
of
lived in
earthly
Indiana.
vegetation that could withstand such extremes. Notably, the hardy lichens, which are found growing scale-like on
I
rocks
liken the
in
hardy
the thin,
lichens.
cold
Yep.
air of mountain peaks
It's like
and
an Earth.
alongside boiling hot springs.
Strangely enough, I like
But
lichens to
such
moss,
things
and
grow on
apparently
the
I'm
Earth.
wrong.
Is it really conceivable that they, or anything,
Ooh.
could
I don't
grow
know,
on
maybe.
the forbidding surface of Mars?
It's inconceivable.
Why do you use that word, Steve? I don't think it means what you think it means. All right, Steve, we made it, but that one was rough.
It was rough. Almost fell asleep.
Yeah, okay, but I have a question for you.
Okay.
The dark areas! Why didn't he mention the dark areas, Steve?
Weren't you listening? I think he mentioned them at least 5, 6 dozen times.
Oh my gosh, that guy.
So, with all this talk of people like Jeff Bezos, everybody else, and Elon Musk wanting to travel to Mars, I just thought this would be a good tribute. So, Elon Musk, this episode is for you.
Oh, Steve, I don't know how I feel about that. I'd rather we be extra nice to the people on this planet who are so rich that they own their own spaceships. Just me. To Musk, to Bezos, and to Branson, we respect you. Do not come after us.
Because we will not go to Mars.
Nope. Mars travel. Traveling to Mars. Just hitchhiking. Just sticking out your thumb. Waiting for a spaceship to show up. Showing
Okay.
maybe a little bit of leg. And they're like, hey, how you doing? I contacted you via ESP. And then I got you. And you came right over. And now we're all like, hey, we're going to Mars. Do you want to go to Mars? Yeah, we can go to Mars.
Well, thanks again for listening to another great episode. If you want to send us an email with any feedback or anything at all, contact us at vinylword22@gmail.com.
Thanks, and thanks again. We will look forward to doing the next episode as soon as we can. And until then, keep listening. Thank you.